53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. Yeah, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. Yeah, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 50.
Hello, happy Thursday, or shall I say it's Speak It Thursday. And I'm your girl, Shuli, and we are back for another conversations that inspire change. And tonight, I have my partner in conversation back in the house.
What's going
Hello.
on, people? How y'all doing? It's good to be back.
Yes, it's been a long time. What's been going on?
Man, nothing. Just trying to maintain, trying to keep a level head with everything that's going on in the country today. Trying to survive with school and, Corona, just typically everything that everybody else is going through. But just grateful that I have my health and my strength and excited, man. Just really excited.
Yes. And welcome back. Good to see you. We missed you. And then welcome to our faithful audience. You know what to do, people. Welcome. We have Asan Taylor. This is, Asan Taylor. She is here in the audience. She is always down. We have people tuning in from all over the place, whether you're tuning in right now live on Facebook or YouTube, whether you're tuning in, we're all over the place now. We're podcasting. We're on HOH Radio 77.7. Welcome back. Happy Thursday. And we're still counting. Okay. We are still counting. We had this 2020 presidential election was Tuesday. And here we are. We still don't know. We went to bed tired. We tired. We went to bed a little scared. We had our hopes, set on one thing happening. But this thing is still going down. So it's a serious matter. And we brought some people in to talk to us about it. But first, LeBrandon. Oh my gosh. How are you feeling? Are you stressed? Are you pressed? Are you?
Well, I don't know. Stressed is not the word that I'm looking for, but I am trying to have an awareness of what is going on, right? So many people have so many ideas, and so many people are trying to populate these ideas into other people's heads. But the one thing about it is what people have to realize is that no matter who is elected, of course, we know who we want to be elected, right? But no matter who is elected, the real work starts the day after that person is announced, because this is when we have to start holding our state representatives accountable for the things that they have promised us, and kind of putting that pressure on them, right? And making sure that they hold up their end of the bargain for the things that we elected them to do, because we trust them, right? We elected them because we put our vote in them because we trust them. And so because we've done this, we can't all of a sudden start to say, I'm tired, or I'm frustrated, or it doesn't matter, because it does matter, because their decisions affect our lives.
They really do. And before we bring on our fellow conversation starters to get this conversation popping, you set us up for greatness tonight. This conversation is going to be spicy, informative, and hopefully inspiring for us to do the work that we need to do, like you said, after the decision is made. And we're praying and hoping and wishing, and then praying again that it's going to work out in our favor this time. But first, we'll give you some well wishes. Sports Talk with Friends, our partner. Yep. They said, welcome back.
Man? Good to see you, man.
Yeah. And Asan Taylor said, yes, we are still counting. All right. So without further ado, we have Houston holding it down, and we have Florida. These, I mean, hey, big city. Well, I'm calling Houston like it's a state. We got Texas and Florida, okay?
Texas.
and we have Twila. We're going to bring her on first. And I have to acknowledge that this is a first fam event. I'm going to show out. Twila is a soror, and we know why that is particularly important because of our soon-to-be vice president. We're going to declare it.
We're going to speak it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to speak it.
President Harris is a sister, right? So we're going to bring Twila on. Twila, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Twila is a political enthusiast. That's what we're calling her, and she's our expert. We said guru. She said enthusiast. Twila is from Houston by way of Alexandria, Louisiana. So she's a homegirl. She's a soror. And I've watched her during this political season. She's been active. She's involved in sharing information. She's involved in community events. She has done the work. You would think that she is a politician or she's an activist in that regard by title. It's indeed because she's a recreational therapist and she's just using all of her skills, abilities, and her passion for the political system, or I say doing her civic duty out there. So welcome, Twila. And then we're going to bring up, again, it's the first fam event. We have our frat brother, Mr. Tony Armstrong, straight out of Miami. He is from the tech world. However, he is also a political enthusiast. He is very concerned and astute at the happenings. They both do their research and we love them, and welcome to both of you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes.
Good to be here.
Yes. Well, all right. So we're going to get this started, and we're going to start with you, Twila. When did you first fall in love with politics?
How did I know you were going to ask that question? Actually, I can tell you that I remember the first time that I participated in a mock election. I was in the second grade. It was 1976. And the election was between Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. And the way that it went about was Weekly Reader, old school. Weekly Reader had where we could vote on who we wanted to be the president. And I remember everybody in my class voted for Jimmy Carter, except for this one young man, Howard Beebe. He was the only one that voted for Gerald Ford. So from that point on, I have really been engaged with, who was going to be the president, because that was the really big deal. I didn't really know about the mayor and go, second grade or whatever. But I will say that I really became full throttle, just really paying attention when I got in high school. So that would have been probably like, I'm going to say maybe my sophomore year, when it was Mondale Ferraro, that era. But my first time actually voting was Bush Dukakis. So from that time up to present, I've really been engaged and just, really, really tried to be informed and that type of thing. Yeah.
Wow. You took us back. Okay. 1976. You remember who was on the mock ballot?
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. I'll never forget it.
But what took me out was she remembered the one kid that voted.
The one that did.
Hilarious.
Right. That took me out. I wasn't ready for that one.
I was not even. That memory is amazing. So what I tell you, do not do Twila wrong because she will remember.
She's gonna remember.
And call you out in public.
In the public. Okay, Tony. Look, so LaShawn Taylor says, Florida, we need answers. LOL. But when did you first fall in love with politics?
I was, I guess, a political junkie from earliest days. My mom worked political campaigns as a volunteer back home in Baltimore, and she used to drag me to campaign headquarters, to events, to being out in the street, doing like retail politics and so forth. And so even from, I think one of my earliest memories is like at, age 8 or 9, being in the campaign headquarters and doing things like stapling papers and what have you, right? So grunt work from earliest days, and it just progressed from there. In fact, almost entirely through high school. Whenever there was a campaign, I volunteered. I spent summers. In fact, at one point, it got to the point where we used to call it a Schmoke summer camp because when so Kurt Schmoke, who was mayor of Baltimore when I was a kid, I worked his campaigns when I was super young and during the summers in between academic years, right? And so, even then we were out in the street, glad handing, talking to people, giving out literature, passing out bumper stickers, putting up lawn signs, etc. Like I said, real retail politics, and it just continued from there. And actually, my first career out of college was in politics. So I spent time working for Democratic candidates in Maryland, and yeah, I mean, I've been around politics for a while, and so it's kind of in my blood. So there's all kinds of other parts to that, but we'll leave it at it's in my blood.
Right. Both of you started out early. I'm trying to think. My earliest memory was President Reagan. I remember going to the poll with my grandmother, but in terms of, and like you said, she would volunteer, she would make phone calls, things like that, but y'all are deep with it. So it's in you. Now, we're going to fast forward. So you have this knowledge, you have this information, this experience that started out early. How deep are you with it at this point? Twila, you said you're not deep, but I feel like you're probably deeper than most. How deep do you dive into politics these days?
As far as my contribution, well, let me say during this particular political season with COVID and everything, it has been mostly financial. So I have, given financially, and then once Vice President Biden decided that, he chose Kamala Harris to be his running mate. Of course, everybody was like, hey, we really got to get in on this. And so then it was like, okay, we're going to donate the year of the founding of our organizations. So I basically, like everybody else, kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to give 1908 every week. Well, then I decided, you know what, I'm going to step it up a notch and I'm going to dedicate giving $1,908. So I went ahead and did that, got them out of the way, and then decided, as important as it was for us to give there, we needed to turn at Senate as well. So the rest of my time was spent on trying to get Jamie Harrison in office because I really wanted him to beat Lindsey Graham. I felt like Lindsey Graham was going to be easily picked off. Okay, we was wrong. But I went for him. I also was donating money to Mike Espy. So during this season, so since we couldn't really get out, I wasn't comfortable really getting out like I normally would have with door knocking and that type of thing. I was more on the financial end, and also, really pumping people up online, calling people, texting. I also did phone calls with Powered by People, which is Beto O'Rourke's organization. I'm NAACP. I made calls for them. So that was really during this season was what I was really doing. That's how I engaged. Otherwise, had COVID not been an issue, I would have been in the street. Seriously.
And you know what? You said something. So Tony, I want to ask you a little bit about it. How influential do you think your services would have been, or the people that you were kind of helping to spearhead this with would have been if COVID-19 would not have been, as prevalent as it is?
So, I think COVID's been actually kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, COVID has sort of refocused us in terms of national priorities, right? Because we're talking about something obviously that really transcends party, it transcends state line, et cetera. So I think it's focused a good portion of the electorate, and you can see that with turnout, right? And so it's helped to really drive turnout. I think that in that respect, COVID's been a benefit, oddly enough, right? Because if you haven't, and I hate to put it in these terms, but but millions ill and 200,000 dead has a real effect on focusing a population. And when you feel like your government has been ineffective in combating this this virus and the resulting carnage, it makes you want to be more active. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that I think COVID has caused a lot of us to refocus our own political efforts in the financial realm. So I think Twila's point, to her point, I wound up donating quite a bit of money as well. Most of mine went to the Biden campaign. Biden Harris did some donations through other donations through Act Blue. And did some straight mail-in donations to some other candidates in order to try and help them finance their runs. So because we haven't been able to be as in person, in the flesh, retail politics, I think we've had to focus more on the money. It's been, in my opinion, unsafe generally to do door-to-door campaigning. And I think that's why you find that the Democratic Party in particular has shied away from that. You see Trump doing big rallies. You see Democrats doing smaller events, socially distant events. You don't see us out necessarily doing hand-to-hand, but you see a lot more involvement, I think, a lot more activity financially as a result of COVID.
So then both of you, like you said, that you're right. COVID has really shaped how we do a lot of things. It's informed, I would say, the campaign. It's highlighted or amplified the issues that we have in this nation. And let's talk about atmosphere. So we have Miami and we have, Miami-Dade County? Mm-hmm. Is that what it is? Yeah. And then we have Harris County and we're Houston and surrounding areas. Let's talk about environment. What has that been like? What have you experienced when you've gone out? What has that been like? Twila, we'll start with you, being here, being involved and active.
It has been electric because everywhere I've gone, where at least in the neighborhood in which I live, because I'm actually in A-Leaf, and I mean, signs. Even in my neighborhood, and people who I would have never, who have never seen signs in their yards before, because I always put signs up in my yard, but people who I'm serious, just driving around the neighborhood, it was a lot of Biden Harris signs. Now, once I got outside of my neighborhood and went closer towards, because I have clients who I do still see, depending on where you were going, if you're going towards, say, Rosenberg, Richmond area, then you started seeing more the Pence, Trump Pence signs and that type of thing. But as far as just like getting out Harris County wide, as far as where I travel, it has just been electric with signs, people, particularly coming during the time of early voting and everything. Everywhere you went, I mean, people were excited. I mean, that first day, that's all I did is I voted, I went around looking at, where all the polling sites were and the people in line, and they were all excited. As a matter of fact, after I did that, there was a rally at Fountain Life, and I actually got to meet Latasha Brown, who was a co-founder, or who is a co-founder of Black Voters Matter. And so she had a huge rally there. So I went there, got to meet her. I was really excited about that because I always see her on MSNBC. And then later that evening, came home, rested up, and like I said, just electric. It was just wonderful. So this past weekend, when Senator Harris came back, I was asked to come and volunteer. So I was able to go to that event, which was only supposed to be 200 people there, and got to meet her, and Common was there. So that was, really, really exciting. The only thing that I will say that I've run into that was a little bit, on the shaky side was where we went to meet the Biden bus. And that was this past Thursday. And before we could even get there, the Trump people were there, because obviously they had gotten hold to the information as where the Sullivan Nation bus tour was going. And so we were to meet at Hightower. And when we got there, I thought I was at the wrong place, because they were there like they were at a football game. Flags, military vehicles, the hearse, all of that was there. So when they left us that next day, when you saw that bus being, chased down 35 or whatever, that was the next day. So they had literally left us, and the very next day, that's what happened to them. They were being chased by those Trump supporters.
How did that feel? That went from being, like you said, feeling the electricity of it all, the energy of it all, to being really confronted by this foolishness.
That was shocking because, it was one thing. Well, I say yeah, it was shocking because we all know Trump supporters, even if they don't really, identify themselves as such, but to really be up close, personal on that type of Trump supporter, where they're very brazen. Now, there were no weapons that we saw, as you said, that we saw, but the yelling, I will say they weren't, it wasn't anything nasty, but it was a lot of yelling, get up in your face, Trump, Trump, Trump kind of stuff. And so what I will say is that when the bus came, instead of going where it was supposed to park, it went elsewhere, and we moved to where the bus was. And when they realized that we were not going to engage them, that we were paying attention to what was going on with the officials that were on that bus, then they tried to advance to where we were. But bless God for the constables and the authorities, as my grandmother would say, they were there, and they let them know, hey, that's where y'all were. You stay over there. Do not come over here bothering these people. And so for the most part, I will have to say it was very peaceful, but they did come to let us know, hey, we know that this is your rally, but we want to let you know that we are here. We are showing up. We are showing out. And this is Trump territory. At least so they thought, So that it was, it was weird, but, I wasn't afraid. I will say I was never afraid. So.
Right. And that's a lot to digest. You know what I mean? When you're trying to go head on and just share your political views and, share your rights and, those kind of things like that. And people try to interfere with that to push their agendas on you. Right. So which leads me to my next question. And it's for either one of you. How does it make you feel knowing that the president is pushing his followers to have this aggressive agenda, with people, right? Because it has potential to go, it can go either way. A lot of people say, I'm not my mom. I'm not going to handle this the way that, my mother or my grandmother handled this. You know what I'm saying? So how does that make you guys feel being that you're in the work?
So for me, I've made this comment in a couple places. First, please excuse me. I'm dealing with a cold, so if my voice sounds gravelly or low, bear with me. But I've made this comment in a couple of contexts. What happens after the election? What happens after Tuesday is going to be highly determined by what the president says. The response of his followers is going to be dictated by his tone. And what you found so far is that Republicans have been very much trying to keep him on the sidelines. His comments of late have been very few and far in between. He just made some comments earlier today, which I appropriately ignored. But I think what we see in the coming days is going to be determined by what he says, the language he uses, and how he presents things. So the tone right now in the country obviously is there. We're in a stressful moment, right? Where I think we can all acknowledge that. But I think we'll see whether things get ratcheted up to a new level or they stay at the current level based on what the president says. And thus far, he's been as moderate as I think he's capable of being, which is to say that he's not very moderate, but this is the best we can expect from Donald Trump. If he decides that he wants to raise the rhetoric, I think you can then start to expect to see things in some cases, in some places, boil over. So I think the best thing for all of us at this point is to be prepared, yes, and to hope that institutional Republicans say to Donald Trump, listen, you got to shut up You got to keep your mouth closed because he's already done a hell of a lot of damage to that party's brand. The question is, how much more damage does he do to the country and what he says, and what his people do in response to.
Indeed. What is the temperature like in Florida right now? Like, not the actual physical temperature, but really, what is the vibe like? Because we're hearing that the surprise of the Cuban voters, everything that was the rhetoric, like you said, take it to another level, and the Cuban voters and the Black voters, they're saying that they really didn't show up. This was the last report. I don't know where it is today because they're still counting ballots, but still.
So I live in Miami, the largest city in Miami-Dade County, and Miami-Dade County is Florida's most populous county, and really the economic and political heart of South Florida. And so the results that we saw here were somewhat surprising to me. Number one, because I had expected far greater turnout. Number one, I had expected margins to be more aligned with what Hillary Clinton got in 2016, where she won the county by like 30 points, right? So that was the expectation I had going in. I had Florida pegged to be much closer than the polls had said. The polls had Biden up by any place from like 2 to 5 points, depending on who you were looking at. But I had expected it was going to be fairly close. I thought it was going to be like 1.2 points, right? Which, when Hillary lost, it was 1 point, I think just over a point. She lost by 114,000 votes, something like that. So I had expected that we were going to see something more along those lines. Instead, what we saw was a very, very slow response from the Biden campaign to the cries of socialism. And I'm sure we may talk about that a little bit more, but the Cuban and Venezuelan populations are very sensitive to talk about socialism / communism, et cetera, right? Because of the unique history of those two countries. So when and Biden was closely tied by Trump, ads and surrogates and so forth. He was closely aligned through them with AOC, Bernie Sanders, the far left wing of the party, and so much so that they were calling Joe Biden a socialist. And if you follow politics at all, you know that Joe Biden is about the furthest thing away from being a socialist as there is in the party. But that worked. That worked. It worked very well. I mean, Cuban Americans, which were probably going to break for Republicans anyway, came out in droves, and their turnout was really good, and it drove margins down. In Dade, I think Biden's going to wind up winning by like 7 points, which he really should win Dade by at least 20, right? And had he won Dade by a margin more like 20, 25, we would be talking about Florida being a one percentage point state, especially with, if there had been decent turnout, right? So the temperature here in Dade was really subdued from a Democratic standpoint. And I should say, I'm not a member of the party. I'm actually a registered independent. I'm left leaning, but I can tell you that a lot of Dems were really, really shocked with how poorly Biden did here in South Florida. But I think that he didn't do well in South Florida because the party and this campaign were slow to respond to the whole socialist thing. I think they thought it wouldn't stick, but it did. And and Cubans in particular are not other Latinos. Biden won Puerto Ricans. I think he won Puerto Ricans 2-1. But he lost Cubans overwhelmingly. And here in South Florida, the Cuban population is where it's at. So, the tone definitely wasn't what you might have felt and seen elsewhere.
And and coming back and looking at, we're talking about, the Cuban vote, the Latino vote, and those kind of things like that. But let's take a look at the urban vote versus the rural vote, right? We're seeing a lot of discrepancies, and discrepancies is not the correct word. We're seeing a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Decrease in value in which this area voted more than this area. Let's just take like Harris County, for instance, right? In Texas, Harris County turned out tremendously, right? But then you take it up to another county, which is a little bit more rural, and those numbers may have they probably superseded as far as the African American vote with all of those people being there. So tell me your thoughts behind that.
That's true. Yeah, because that was something that's what Twila, when you referred to Richmond and Rosenberg, which those are outer line areas in Fort Bend County versus, like you said, like a Harris County.
Right.
So here in Florida, Miami-Dade definitely underperformed in terms of vote, expected vote, right? Broward, which is the county directly north of us where Fort Lauderdale is located, did the business. I mean, Broward always does the business, and they did the business this time. They showed up big time for Biden and brought the results that people expected that it would. Same thing roughly in Palm Beach, although Palm Beach County, which is directly north of Broward, is a little bit more of a split. You might see like 60-40, 55-45 in terms of the vote. But that county also went for Biden as expected, and he did pretty well. He did reasonably well. What we found in Florida, though, was that Donald Trump overperformed among white voters in all the other counties, especially along the Gulf Coast. So, which was the really interesting thing from my perspective on this election, is that Donald Trump overperformed among white voters. And after everything we've seen, he managed to increase his margin in several counties, through new voters, a lot of new registrations and so forth. So even in Florida, where we expected things to be tighter, we found that Trump got a lot more white vote. And that offset, what would have been anticipated increase in African American vote. So, what that says about the electorate, I don't like, but it is what it is. So, and I would imagine that it's the same thing in Texas. He probably overperformed in a lot of places.
Well, let me ask you this, because I was reading somewhere where he actually his campaign targeted new voting white college students, right? I don't know if you guys have read that, right? So do you think that tactic, well, I know you're saying it's worked in Florida because he had a large population, but what about in Texas? Do you think, Twila, that we experienced the same thing?
And I haven't really, I've been in a daze ever since the 3rd. So I have not read any information as it pertains to actually let me say this. I think I'm shell shocked at the number of our Latin community that still went for him after everything that was said and done.
Can I be ratchet real quick, Twila? I'm sorry. But he want to sit y'all back too. Like, come on. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be real about the situation.
Well, and let me tell you. Let me get ratchet right back. Because the first thing I thought was, my baby ain't never been in no cage. Okay. He wasn't trying to build a wall to keep me out. He was building a wall to keep you out. Okay. He descended the escalator saying that he was going to build a wall to keep you out. He called you rapists, murderers, and the like. I was day one. So I was very outdone with that. Now that number has been ringing in my head. And the first thing I thought was like, you know what? We cannot continue to try to drag that demographic in with us if they're not going to assist in helping you. Help us help you, bruh. help us
Right.
help you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Harris
Oh,
County showed up and showed out. Tarrant County showed up, showed out. The brothers and sisters in and around Austin and San Antonio. Beto was working his thing in El Paso. They really needed that Valley area. Matter of fact, when Kamala Harris came here last Friday, that was the first stop she made. She went there before she went to Fort Worth and then came here. So that is very shocking. However, let me go back and say that when I first moved to Houston in 1998, because I was teaching at a small school in the area called Sunnyside. Okay. And I don't know what conversation I ended up having with my principal at that time, but she was the one who, kind of hips me to the fact that, Hispanics and not all. So it's nothing is ever all anything, but she had to hit me to, depending on once they, get in and kind of assimilate, they go from being Jaime to being Jamie. They go from being Jorge to being George. So at a point, they don't see themselves as Hispanic or Latin or whatever. They're white. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if that is what it is, and I think finally after 22 years of kind of hearing it and whatever, it finally sunk into me. So we cannot afford to, try to pull all these other groups in, trying to get them to do right. We got to, hey, it's us. It's us, and we need to move accordingly. We need to move in a block accordingly. So as it pertains, and I just think it's funny, when you said he overperformed, and with white people, white people don't never overperform with themselves. When Ted Cruz let that man talk between his white legs, okay, he talked under Heidi Cruz's dress. Talked about his daddy. Okay. Mario Rubio, he made all kind of cracks. Lil Mario kind of was, trying to hint that the man had a small appendage. Okay. But when it came time, when he got elected, they fell in line. It didn't matter what happened past tense. Talk about my wife, my daddy, my mama, whatever. I'm with you. And I learned from a soror, actually a politician here. She said this and it has stuck with me from the time she said it until now. She said, when you're in politics, there are no permanent enemies. There are no permanent friends. There are only permanent interests. And the Republicans have that down pat. That's right. We are not as dogmatic as they are. We get in our feelings. We want Jesus Christ to be on the ballot in order for him to run. And they didn't care. These people right now, there is no reason that this race should be this close. With everything that happened, I think that's the most disappointing thing for me is that, I believe in God that Joe Biden is going to win. But the fact that we are literally sitting here 2 days later doing this right here, it's heartbreaking. It's disturbing. And and like I said, for Texas, we really thought we were, I do believe we are bluer, obviously, we edging on, but the Latin community really was disappointing in the way that they rode for him this time.
And you know what? And when you think about it, you mentioned your principal, right? Another shocking factor, and we might not be able to talk about this right now, but just something to think about. Educators have one of the largest groups as far as like workers that are out there. And it was several educators that still chose to vote his way, even after complaining about the fact that he didn't care enough about us, and made sure that he put efforts into place to make sure that we were back in school. So you vote for somebody who doesn't value your life, right? And that's the same thing for Latinos, right? They voted for this man who doesn't value you as a person. So, Julie, I see you have something to say, but I have to ask this question because it's time to get ratchet. You guys have hit some very important points, and they're all good. But now, let's talk about this ratchetness of Kanye West.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, first, before we do that, let's do the comment, because that's where I'm like, I'm ready, because we're talking about Latino, but I'm like, what about us? What about the entertainment industry? We have some things that we need to jump into, and we need to use your term Tony. We're gonna ratchet this up a little bit, not in the sense of the word, but yeah. So some ratchet things have gone on. But first, we're gonna say, Asan Taylor says, you have to realize a lot of the younger white college students were in the midst of the protests this year, so their Republican views were taught by their parents. Those were flipped. So that was the comment she made earlier. So it's been an interesting turn of events. And right now, if you're tuning in to HOH 77.7 or you're listening on your podcast apparatus, we are here with Tony Armstrong and Twila Dotson, and we are talking about politics. And right now we are about to, again, ratchet it up. What about Kanye? What about him? What about Cube? What about Wayne? I'm throwing all those in there. Who
Throw them all out.
My God.
Because your boy got over 60,000 votes. Let's talk about that.
So I wrote a piece I wrote a piece that I shared on Facebook and on Medium about a week ago, I guess, and talking about why Black men were looking at Donald Trump and why there was so much influence of people in entertainment and so forth. That seemed to move some Black men towards voting for Donald Trump. So I'm actually going to sidestep the Kanye issue because number one, because I feel like that's a dead horse, right? I mean, people are going to waste votes, and 60,000 wasted votes is 60,000 wasted votes. So I'm not going to talk too much about Kanye, but he's really a symptom, right? The problem is, in my mind, that a lot of folks are disaffected or feel disaffected, and they have grievance against women. Sometimes they have grievance against the system. They have grievance against the party, or whatever the case may be. And they've allowed that grievance to make them make really bad choices politically, right? So Kanye, like I said, he's just a symptom and not worth really talking about, in my opinion. Not to say we shouldn't discuss it, but from my standpoint, I don't worry about Kanye West. What I think more about is what's making people who should be politically astute make bad decisions politically, right?
Great
so question. That to me is more of the concern. I mean, if it's not Kanye, and it's going to be Ice Cube, who put out like a 4 or 5 page manifesto for Donald Trump, when there was like a 40-page policy statement that Biden's camp had, that covered a lot of the same pieces, right? So, what is it that makes people pay attention to that, as opposed to doing real research, making real intelligent political decisions, and not following what some rapper, singer, whatever, whomever, entertainer, whatever their statements are? Let them make their statements. I think it's just like any other competition of ideas. You got to have better ideas than these people talking. And you got to find a better way of communicating those ideas if you expect for people to follow you. And so that's where my energy is, right? I'm trying to figure out how we make better arguments overall, so we don't have to listen to the Kanyes, the Ice Cubes, the Lil Waynes, the 50 Cents, the Steve Harveys, the Ray Lewises, the whomever. We can keep going down the list. And notice, all those people I named, not near one of them is a real policy individual. Like, not one of them is actually talking about policy. Yeah, they have ideas, and that's great, but not one is truly invested to the point where they're thinking about policy, to how to implement the ideas. So that's where I think the problem is. It's not them. It's the fact that we haven't been able to articulate our own platform, in a way that makes people want to listen to that, as opposed to listening to the person who has a hot album.
Mm-hmm. Can I say this?
Yes.
And I what I realize, and I guess I should have, previously, when I get on my Facebook page and I'm, putting up all these stats and, it's information, I'm good for taking a picture of something I've seen and put it on my page and recording, something that somebody said on MSNBC and putting it out there. But more often than not, the people who are seeing that on my page, they're already voters. Okay. With the exception of the fact that, because when I was teaching, my students, even my kindergartners, we talked about city government. So they knew that at that time. I remember specifically, Bill White was the mayor when I was teaching kindergarten. So my children in my classroom, if they didn't know anything else, they knew who ran the city of Houston. And at that time, it was Bill White. And I gave them very rudimentary things that, what the mayor did. So they had an idea. Hey, he's the one who hires the police chief. And he's the one who works with the fire department. All these little things that even that their little minds at 5, 6 years old, they could understand. So those children who are now voters, I got 3 or 4 calls last week. Miss Dotson, I just wanted to find out, okay, how should I be voting about, because they knew at the top of the ticket, but I always let them know the further down that ballot you go, the closer to home it is, it affects you. So saying all that to say, anybody who's on my page, more often than not, they're going to be voters. What we're going to have to do is accept people like, and I'll say a Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne, God bless him, he does have a following. Okay. So what it would take would be to embrace a Lil Wayne, pulling in an Ice Cube. We have to talk to these people, make them understand, give them the language. Okay. Make them understand, because, I dig what Ice Cube was trying to do, but without him being, having somebody, I don't want to say trained, but actually going in with people who knew what they were supposed to do. Because first of all, as astute as I can consider myself being in politics, I would have never gone in alone with any of the Trump people. Never would have gone in without some kind of reinforcement or whatever. He allowed himself to be contacted by, he reached out to them. They were like, oh yeah, come on in. He chopped it up with them. And before the door was closed, there they were putting it out that he had reached out to them and they were, had come to some agreement. And that boy has spent from that time to this doing damage control. Okay. Correct. So, hey, because we know Ice Cube has a following. It been, Ice Cube running my age. You know what I'm saying? We've been listening to him in 88. So Ice Cube, the people that do Lil Wayne, the ones who do 50 Cent, the ones who do Waka Flocka, and all these people, if they do, we know that somewhere out there are young brothers and sisters who listen to them. You pull them in, explain to them, okay, A, this is what this means. B, this is what this means. This is how it affects. So if you're going to get out there and start spouting off, at least you've done so as educated as you can. But we have to pull in everybody. The day of thinking that the talented 10th is going to be able to pull in all these people, it's just going over their heads. So you're going to have to pull in the W.B. Du Bois. You're going to have to pull in the Booker T. Washingtons. You're going to have to go in and pull out the people who can talk to these kids who, if that's what they're listening to, and if that's what they're listening to, we're going to have to go where they are. We can't shame people who aren't voting or, and I know I did it. I was upset for people that was 50 years old. And I made a post on my page. It's like, hey, just vote. Don't tell us that this is your first time voting and you 76 years old. Because I'm wondering, where were you for the, the other 30 plus elections? Just say, hey, I voted. Don't say, this is my first time voting in the name of it. No, don't do that. But what I will say is it's going to have to be a collaborative effort. Kanye West, bless his heart, years ago when his mama was alive, when she kept him on his meds, he probably was okay. At this point, I think from the time that Dr. West died up until present, he has not been right. That baby is bipolar. Kim can't keep him under wraps. And so it's just a shame that he has gone off on the deep edge. What's worse is that you had people, to your point, Tony, who took their vote and voted for that boy and voted for him. And so maybe if somebody had come along and say, hey, I know you disgusted and this, that, and the other, but let me tell you why you shouldn't vote for Kanye. You might be feeling him, but let me tell you why Joe Biden or even Donald Trump, whoever, is better for your situation. People will get mad. They'll say, well, I ain't voting for him. But guess what? If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris don't win tonight, they gonna be all right. They have health care. They got money. They have housing. They're educated. Joe Biden is going to be okay. We're the ones that's going to be messed up. Okay, we're the ones that's going to be messed up. They're going to be able to cart them off somewhere. If that man, that's another thing I was thinking. Donald Trump is going off the edge. He still has the nuclear codes. What stops him from doing something outrageous right about now? And if he does decide to do it, Barack Obama gonna be able to get up out of here because he's gonna be protected. Joe Biden and his wife, they're gonna sneak them underground somewhere. It's us. And I don't think people realize that. I don't think they think like that. Like you're not hurting anybody when you vote crazy or don't vote, but yourself.
Right.
Okay,
and,
I'm through venting.
No, and listen, and that was amazing because you know what a lot of people don't think about is the fact that, you know, when you're in the first 4 terms of your presidency, you're trying to do everything that you can to get people on your side, right? Because you want to win a second term. But then that second term, that's your term where, you know, I can do what I want to do because guess what? I'm not getting I can't even get reelected, right? Correct. So what you actually said brings light, you know, to people. And Tony, to your comment, you know, it's really good that, you know, your mindset is there to where he's not important. But let's talk about the people who it was 60,000 people influenced by him. What if that 60,000 people would have turned into a group of people that elected him into presidency, right? Then where would we be?
That's how we ended up here. That's how we
exactly. With the foolishness. The foolishness.
So here's my thought on that. So I agree. I think Twila hit a bunch of very key points, and one of the main ones is that we do have to engage with young people. We have to engage with folks who we have to find them wherever they are. We got to find voters wherever they are. So totally agree with that, and I totally also agree with using the platforms, whatever those platforms are, to educate voters to make better decisions, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing, to your point, Frat, what would have happened if a bunch of people made a what the hell decision, which is kind of how we got Donald Trump? Then we have to deal with the results, right? Here, the thing that never ceases to amaze me is the stupidity of the American voter. And I know that that's kind of harsh, but if you look at how a Donald Trump gets elected, or how a Kanye West gets 60,000 votes, yeah, some of it is protest, right? Some of it's a protest vote. But I think a lot of it, especially in a Trump case, is that people are not being very diligent in doing the research, and they're fed up. Honestly, they're mad. I get that. I understand it. But I think it's a combination of yes, being fed up, but a greater portion of it is not being real diligent with the vote. So let's look at how we got like Donald Trump, right? So he was the guy that the Republican Party decided to nominate out of there was 25 people or something at one point that were running for the Republican nomination. And included in them were some people that actually had some decent common sense, even if you didn't agree with them politically, right? Like, for instance, I mean, the guy who I like to hold up is a Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush, yeah, he's a Bush, and maybe Americans the Republican Party didn't want to go with a third Bush, but the man was a governor, spoke 2 languages, had decent relationships with Spanish people in Florida, had been a governor that actually had decent support from people on the left, from centrists and people on the left, right? So the Republican Party voters could have easily chosen a Jeb Bush to be their presidential candidate, and it's a very strong likelihood that he may have still won. He may have still beat Hillary, right?
Right.
But voters chose to put their vote in a person whom they only knew from reality TV. So this is when this gets me to, like I said, I'm never ceased to be amazed by the stupidity of the American voter. People fell for a guy who had one hit television show, but couldn't make money running casinos. So it's very hard to make a
He's an
casino go bankrupt.
entertainer. That's it.
Right.
Not
He's
a
an entertainer, right? So, but 60 million people voted for him then, and in this go around, he's going to get probably, I don't know, something around 70 million votes, right? So, you know, the American voter needs to spend a lot more time being more diligent about who they give their vote to. And that applies on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, right? But in this instance, I mean, this is a stupid voter writ large, you know, and you know, and now we're in a battle where this guy, you know, who shouldn't have won in the first place, did win. He's appealed to the worst instincts of many Americans, and now he's got a legitimate, if outside shot at being reelected. But this all comes back to making really bad choices because people are not thinking about who they're voting for.
Right. That's really scary. Really, really, really. This whole thing has been scary. Like you said, the fact that we're here, we're so close. Like you said, so much that we don't know, but we don't do our due diligence, and we have our own reasons for doing it, but it's still a very scary place. Thank you for tuning in to HOH 77.7. This is Speak It Thursday. Again, we have Twila and Tony, and they have been breaking it down. They are political enthusiasts. Tell us how to find you if they want to continue the conversation. Twila says she's just Twila out here in these streets. Twila Dotson, but tell us how to find you, and then we're gonna, as we get ready to get out of here.
Yeah, people can find me on Facebook. I'm under my name, Twila Dotson. Just hit me up, send me a friend request, and on Instagram, I'm at Reshee. I'm sorry, yeah, Reshee69. That's my middle name, RESHEE 69. That's the year I was born, y'all. You no idea.
I was keeping it to myself, keeping it to myself.
Yeah.
How can they find you, Tony?
You can find me on Facebook under Tony Armstrong. I don't have a pseudonym on Facebook, so look for Tony Armstrong, and I'll gladly accept your friend request. And you can find me on Instagram at Scotch and Sticks. So the other thing I do besides, I'm not a political analyst. I just play one because I stayed at a Holiday Inn once. So so I do that. But the other thing I do is cigars and scotch. So if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Scotch N, the letter N, Sticks, STICKS. So Scotch and Sticks. So yeah.
Thank you both for coming on. I'm going to read a couple of comments here. Is it Carlet Chardonnay Webb says elections have consequences. Yeah. That is a great way to close out. So thinking about the consequences, give us something really quickly, Twila. Going forward, no matter who wins, what's the next thing that we need to do to be prepared, equipped, and move forward in the right way?
I'm going to tell you what I said a few weeks ago, and I am very serious. Regardless of who wins, Black people need to have three things: a plan, a passport, and a pistol. Period.
That pistol, period. Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, get licensed or whatever, because it's getting ready to get rough in these streets. We do not know what that man is getting ready to do. I'm reading a book right now by his former lawyer, Michael Cohen. And everything that Michael predicted, he is doing. And again, that's why I'm like, this is not over. If he loses, he's lame duck. But he has a long time. It's a long time between now and January, y'all. It's a long, and he is just foaming at the mouth. And he has these people all out, just they're right now protesting. Right now. So it's it's dangerous out here. So yeah, passport, plan, and a pistol.
Yeah.
All right.
So I am very much a Second Amendment left leaning person. So I definitely agree with being prepared for any eventuality, things jump off. And that does include being armed if necessary. The thing politically, the thing I think we need to do is Black folks need to remember that it doesn't matter if Joe Biden wins tonight. At the end of the day, we still need to have an agenda, and we still need to press our elected officials to do what we need them to do. It's not just about electing a Democratic president or even a Democratic House and Senate. Ultimately, it's about what we demand they do. And if we just say, okay, we got him elected and we stop there, well, then we're going to complain in 4 years that he hadn't done anything for us. Well, we didn't ask him to do anything, and we didn't hold his feet to the fire. So we need to demand what we want, and we need to be prepared to vote in our own best interest, which is something that we sometimes don't do.
Thank you both. Thank you both.
Yeah, this was.
Latoya Walker said this was refreshing. I appreciated having this conversation. What do you have to say, partner in conversation?
Man, listen, you guys have shed so much light and provided so many details to things that people may have wanted to say or may have been thinking, right? So having that plan, that passport and that pistol, it is real integral. But like Tony said, I totally agree with you. The true work starts the day after whoever is elected, holding them accountable, right? Holding your state representatives accountable to make sure that whatever it is that you need as an American citizen, as a right, that you push them and do not take no for an answer, because that's who you trusted, right? Speak up for your behalf, right? So if I gave you my vote, then you deserve to hear my voice.
Absolutely.
The work is not over. I think we all agree on that. And as I get ready to close out, I don't think there's anything else that I need to say other than in the West African tradition, they have a word that's called the ashe, which it means our words have power. We have the power to speak a thing into existence, and we're going to speak this victory into existence, and we're going to keep speaking up, speaking truth to power, and putting some action behind our words. And until next week, I say to everyone, ashe, go out there and speak it. Have a good night.
Good night.